Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Prophecy Wire. Today, we're talking about what's happening in Spain. Spain is having a massive power outage, and I'm just going to get right into it and show you guys some clips of what's happening over there right now.
At a roundabout in the Spanish capital, cars line the roads, crossing at all angles, the traffic lights without power. And it's a similar story in the Portuguese capital of Lisbon. The cause, a major power outage across the two countries. Causing chaos for travellers, these rail passengers stranded in Valencia. Some even walking along the railway lines. Many without any information anywhere across the country.
I'm very cut off at the moment. I'm on the 13th floor and getting very little information other than what little I can see through the Spanish web pages, because as well as obviously losing Wi-Fi, the cellular network, I don't know how well you can hear me at the moment, but the cellular network has been very sketchy.
And across Spain, queues for buses like these travellers in Barcelona, told not to drive unless it's necessary.
So this is some pretty fascinating things that are happening right now. We'll take another look at one of these clips.
Spanish authorities say power has been partially restored in northern, southern and western Spain following a massive power outage that has caused chaos for millions of people across the Iberian Peninsula. While the government has promised an investigation into the outages, which also affected parts of France and Portugal, the National Energy Network has suggested that they could have been caused by extreme temperature variations in the interior of the country.
The outage was as sudden as it was inexplicable. Across Spain and parts of Portugal and France, the electricity which keeps a modern economy humming simply disappeared. Traffic lights were out, meaning streets were soon gridlocked. In Madrid, the metro system shut down, funneling more people onto busy streets and into cars that then clogged arteries. Outside Atocha, Madrid's rail hub, thousands found themselves stranded with little idea of how to get home or get to work. Inside, the normally bustling platforms were eerily deserted. Airports fell back on emergency power supplies, but scores of flights were still grounded. That was expected to have a knock-on effect across Europe. The outage occurred around 11:30 this morning Irish time. Play at the Caja Magica on the 7th day of the Madrid Masters tennis tournament was suspended, with fans using their mobile phones to find their way out of the stadium. The president of the Madrid region called on the authorities to implement a national emergency plan.
Periodistas todos estamos recibiendo información.
We are all getting information in bits and pieces, so we can't give you much more in this situation, which is so abnormal. What we are going to do is ask the government to activate Emergency Plan 3 so that the army can preserve order if necessary.
Bank machines, office computers, restaurant ovens were all affected, an expanding glitch that rippled through every aspect of life.
So this is quite fascinating. Nobody was expecting this. They say there's many different things that could have caused it. The temperature changes, maybe a solar flare. They have some different articles talking about this. Spain, Portugal, and parts of France hit by massive power outage. A nationwide power outage hit Spain and Portugal on Monday. That's today, leaving millions without electricity. Reports indicate issues with the European electrical grid. Then here, Spain and Portugal hit by an unexplained power blackout, wiping out traffic lights and causing travel chaos. So this is when there's things like losing power, it causes such chaos that most people don't even really expect. Is this something that we could see happening more often? And we're talking about this in a biblical prophecy aspect, and the answer is yes. We're going to be taking a look at some different Bible verses and quotations, but this is something that we should not just ignore oh, that happened. It's unfortunate for the people in Spain and Portugal. That couldn't happen here, though. Wherever here is for you. And maybe here was in Spain for you or Portugal. And now you're feeling it. They've already started getting some power back on in some regions. We're not sure exactly how long it'll take to get power back to the whole countries. We have become so desensitized to these events that we just ignore them. That's very interesting, but I don't really need to prepare for it. We need to be thinking about these things, especially if we are Bible-believing Christians, because there is a lot of connection to what's happening in the world and what's happening in the Bible. And we're told so that we can be aware and not caught as a thief in the night. Even in North America, we've been seeing different sort of threats that can come, and people talking about these things. This, for instance.
This is the sound most people expect to hear in an attack on the American home front. But when war comes, we may only hear this. Silence, when many of the things we rely upon stop working. The Commission on the National Defense Strategy recently warned senators the United States is unprepared for a devastating cyber war that will bring life in towns and cities across America to a standstill.
The public is essentially clueless about the massive cyber attacks that could be launched any day by our adversaries, not just nation states, but rogue actors as well.
Experts see the next war beginning with a keyboard attack on America's critical infrastructure, threatening to cut off internet, electricity, water, transportation, and financial systems. It would mean almost everything from phones to gas pumps to cash machines to traffic lights suddenly stop working.
I want to ask you guys online if you can put in the chat, what would happen if the power went out and it didn't come back on? What sorts of things are controlled by power? If you're in a city, let's say you're in a city right now, and the power goes off. Now, they mention several things that would happen. What are some things that you guys think could take place if there was a power outage or some sort of a cyber attack where the internet is cut off, maybe the phone lines, the cell phone service, all of these things ceased? What would we see? What sort of situation? I want you guys to put in the chat and see what you guys have to say about this. We need to actually do some thought about this. The Bible has several situations from beginning to end where there was different calamities and catastrophes, where the people in the Bible had to prepare. Noah is a very good example. Lot was warned ahead of time of destruction that was going to happen there. There is, even regarding the destruction of Jerusalem, Jesus told them, these are the signs, and when you see this, leave Jerusalem so that you can be away from where these catastrophes are actually going to take place. So we have a couple answers here. Joseph Marr said financial ruin. Financial ruin. And that's a very interesting one. If we lost power for days or weeks or months, then how do you even have financial transfers? Because people don't care around gold. People don't care around these things, and you can't eat gold. You can't run your vehicle with gold. Things would change quite quickly. Chaos. City water would shut down. Can you imagine being in a high-rise building and the water gets shut down? No water. That doesn't mean you have no water to drink. That means you have no water to drink, to shower, to flush the toilet. There's no plumbing now. And you have thousands of people in a high-rise building who there's no way to have proper sanitation anymore, that would be devastating. This is something the Bible warns us about. And now I'm going to go back to here. There's another article. Countries shore up their digital defense as global tensions raise the threat of cyber warfare. Now, this is all from this cyber warfare idea, or even overheating or solar flares or anything like this. Now, there is a documentary that came out quite a while ago, and it's called After Armageddon. It's a very fascinating documentary. It was eerily similar to something that happened a couple years ago. I don't even want to say the word or else our video is going to get taken down, but it was something that happened in 2019, 20, 21. I think everybody knows what I'm referring to. And this documentary goes through a scenario. What would happen if some of the key people, because there's only like a handful of people who know how to run and rework some of the transformers, the main grid transformers in America. There's less than half a dozen in the whole country. And if some of those got hit or some of those malfunctioned, it's 6 to 9 months order, and they're not held in stock before they can even make one again. And then if there's other things that are contributing, it might even be longer, and the whole grid shuts down. So this documentary here, and I'm going to play just a tiny bit here, or else we may get a copyright strike. Hopefully not, because we're doing commentary on this on short little pieces. But it's interesting how they bring up these things a lot ahead, like it's forethought. And it's eerily similar to what we've seen. And there's another video I'm going to bring up as well that has a very similar feel to what just happened in Spain. And I'll be sharing that with you a little bit later on the live stream. And if any of you have questions, different questions about some of these different Bible events, make sure you put them in the comments, and we'll get to those at the end of the stream here, and we'll try and answer as many as possible. So let me play just a little bit from this.
Nothing could have prepared us for what happened. Millions dead in a matter of weeks. Billions across the world. America was devastated. Nowhere was spared. Without food, water, or power, cities like ours became wastelands. We were just an ordinary family. But pretty soon we realized if we wanted to stay alive, we had to get out of the city. We thought we were leaving the worst behind us. But we were wrong.
I'm going to pause it there for 1 second. And it's interesting how they said they seemed like a pretty ordinary family, but if they were going to survive, they realized they needed to get out of the city. And they thought the worst was behind them, but they were wrong. And I find that very fascinating. But still, they needed to leave in order to survive. So basically, this guy's a doctor. It's a docudrama. It makes a story to kind of tell through a scenario if it could actually take place. And they have a bunch of different people that they're interviewing along on this. They have some different, let me see if I can find a spot here. These different guys that they're talking about. If there's an emergency, there's only 3 days worth of food in the grocery store. And if something happens and people are rushing to the grocery store, typically it's 1 day. If there's something severe enough, because there's the volume of people is going to try and stock up and prepare. Now, we want to be preparing much before something like this, and we want to be thinking ahead. But it's a very interesting concept. They continue through, and later on, I'll see if I can find on the later part of this documentary right here.
Perhaps compared to some of the early English settlers on the east coast of the United States who had years of famine when they first got here because they had to learn how to farm under new conditions.
In order to grow food, we would probably jump back to the 1850s, 1860s in terms of technology, where we would be using more human power, more animal power to grow food. But it would be a radical change in that.
So it all goes back to the same thing, food. I mean, food is the basically the most important thing that we need. If we don't have food and water, but water sometimes is a little bit easier in some areas, food takes time. Food doesn't grow instantly. So we had some other responses here. All food will be spoiled. That's a fantastic point. Your freezer doesn't run. So if you have a bunch of food in your freezer you think you're stocking up, that's going to be gone. No clean water. You can't purify the water. No fuel for vehicles. No electricity. No air conditioning or heating. What if something like this happened especially in Canada, where it's decently cold and it's minus 20 degrees? Then even your house is going to freeze, your water pipes are going to freeze, and then even if it thaws out again, all that's going to be broken. Mass chaos, no water, food shortage, no security, riots. There's a lot of things that would take place. Now, let's see what the Bible has to say about some of these things, and then we're going to come back to this idea in a little bit. So 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 2-6, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say, peace and safety, this is the problem. We're not saying this here. Then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. So we who believe in the Bible, who are reading the Bible, it shouldn't take us as a thief. We should know. You're all children of the light and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. We need to be looking for these things happening, and we need to be aware, and we need to be prepared for them. If you know a thief is coming, you can prepare. God is asking us to prepare, not just to pretend that nothing is going on. When we see these signs, we need to take action. The world is no more ready to credit the message for this time than were the Jews to receive the Savior's warning concerning Jerusalem. Come when it may, the day of God will come unawares to the ungodly. And what is the day of God? So this day of God is a concept that you need to study. It's talked about almost more than any other subject in the Bible, and it has to do with a certain period of time at the end where there's a time of trouble such as never was, and there's going to be all sorts of chaos happening in the world. When life is going on in its unvarying round, when men are absorbed in pleasure, in business, in traffic, in money-making, when religious leaders are magnifying the world's progress and enlightenment, and the people are lulled in false security, If there's not a false security right now in America, then I don't know, because all the religious leaders are saying, yes, we got this now. Christians are coming back to power. Trump is going to fix this. Everything's being positive. And this is a false sense of security. We're in the last days. And the Bible says that we should see a lot of unsettling things in the last days. So there might be ups, there's going to be downs, but we need to be aware so when the downs come, we're not caught as a thief. When religious leaders are magnifying the world's progress and enlightenment, and the people are lulled in a false security, then as the midnight thief steals within the unguarded dwelling, so shall sudden destruction come upon the careless and ungodly, and they shall not escape. And ungodly does not mean not Christian. It does not mean not Bible believing. It means ungodly as in not doing godly and not heeding God's word. In the book of Revelation, chapter 1, verse 1, says this is the revelation of Jesus Christ to give to his servants so that we can heed what is written in the prophecy of that book. So what we see there is a warning, and we need to heed that warning so that we are ready for the time that is coming. We are living in the time of the end. The fast fulfilling signs of the times declare that the coming of Christ is near at hand. The days in which we live are solemn and important. The Spirit of God is gradually but surely being withdrawn from the earth. Plagues and judgments are already falling upon the despisers of the grace of God. The calamities by land and sea, the unsettled state of society, and the alarms of war are pretentious. They forecast approaching events of the greatest magnitude. Now, we talked about cyber attack. This has to do with war. And the Bible explains that there is going to be many instances of war at the end. It says wars and rumors of wars. So it's going to be very unsettled. And right now, we're in relative peace most places. There is in certain areas, but we should be seeing a lot more of that soon to come. And how can we be out of the firing range, to use that term, so that we are ready for these events and not affected by these events? Again and again, the Lord has instructed that our people are to take their families away from the cities. Now, this is fascinating because this was written close to 200 years ago. 200 years? No, 150 years ago. And just on this documentary, they say if they were going to survive, they would have to leave the city. And here we're being told, get away from the city, into the country where they can raise their own provisions. What are provisions? I want you guys to put in the chat, in the comments, what are provisions? What does raise your own provisions mean? Please put in the chat. For in the future, the problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. Now, what is this buying and selling that is being mentioned here? It's going to be very serious. Why is buying and selling going to be very serious? Well, could it have to do with different control? Could it have to do with war that's taking place? Could it have to do with, there's so many things that we could be guessing at, but we don't need to guess. The Bible tells us exactly what this is talking about. We should now begin to heed the instruction given us over and over again. Get out of the cities into rural districts where the houses are not crowded closely together and where you'll be free from the interference of enemies. And I want you guys to put in the chat, what do you think free from the interference of enemies is? What is free from the interference of enemies? So get out of the cities has been a warning for us for a long time. Apparently it's in the Bible somewhere. So some of you said, grow your own food. food and water. And then someone mentioned here, truth triumphant. We are to do as they did in Ellen White's time and prepare for hard times by putting up food for the winter. Anyone living in the country who did not starved. Food, water, safety, wood and light, food shortage. Okay, so we got lots of good responses here. Now we have free from the interference of enemies. What does this mean? How can we be free from that? What are enemies? What sort of enemies are we trying to be not having interference from? Country Living, page 8, paragraph 2 and 4. There are reasons why we should not build in the cities. On these cities, God's judgments are soon to fall. The time is near when large cities will be swept away, and all should be warned of these coming judgments. Oh, that God's people had a sense of the impending destruction of thousands of cities now almost given to idolatry. Okay. Someone said our enemies will want what we have. That can be an option as well. Okay. I've been just quoting from this little booklet, Country Living. And I highly recommend, if you guys don't have this book, get this booklet. It's a nice little booklet, 32 pages, and it talks all about country living and why country living is important in the last days. So we have this on our website. If you go to our website, go to our store, type in country living, this will pop up. Get this and get some for your friends, your family, and share this because it's a fantastic little read talking about what we need to do and why country living is important. Maybe I can even set this here so that it's visible for everyone. Okay, we'll see if I can knock this over. Right there, should be okay. Okay, now what did we see about enemies? Our enemies will want what we have, the deceived. Flee from interference of enemies, meaning be off grid. Storing food correctly is just as important as growing it. What good is to grow it if you can't store it properly? I 100% agree. Very important. Here's some thoughts that I have on some of these interference of enemies. Enemies are anyone who's impeding you from being obedient to God. An enemy is anyone who makes it difficult, even indirectly difficult, for you to do what God is asking you to do and be prepared. So for instance, and I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just telling you what I've done and what I believe, what I think. And you guys need to talk to God yourself and study for yourself to know what you need to do. When in Saskatchewan, that's the central part of Canada, it is flat, super flat. You watch your dog run away for 3 days. And they do a lot of spraying on the big fields. That spraying wafts over, it can go miles. And to me, that's an enemy because we don't want that on our food. We don't want that on us. It causes disease. There's a ton of GMOs. If you don't want GMOs, they're cross-contaminating with your garden. Now your whole garden is a GMO. So I think this qualifies under that category as well. They're not trying to do that to you, but the influence is there. It's still influencing these things which are a hindrance to what you are trying to accomplish. And again, any questions, put them in the chat and we will try and get to questions at the in a little bit here. Okay. Romans 13:11-14. Actually, there is some I'm going to skip these 2 slides because we're running out of time for today. And this is another documentary, and it's called Connections. It's quite a while ago that it was made. Very fascinating. And I think it's this first section here, I can't play the entire thing because it's quite long, but I will skip through it. And it triggers a lot of thoughts in your mind. And this is just a secular documentary, but very fascinating.
Would you do me a favor? I'd like to stop talking for a minute, and when I do, take a look at the room you're in, and above all, at the man-made objects in that room that surround you. The television set, the lights, the phone, and so on. And ask yourself what those objects do to your life just because they're there. Go ahead. It's 1 minute past 5 in the evening, rush hour in downtown Manhattan. 800,000 people crowd onto subways, looking forward to home, to the end of this journey. For most of them, the technology carrying them doesn't exist. They take it for granted. Two minutes past 5, Kennedy Airport, the usual evening departure rate, passengers with appointments in New Delhi, London, Tokyo, appointments they expect to keep. And 200 planes due to arrive in the next 5 hours.
703, turn left heading 230.
No delays expected. It's now exactly 100 miles northwest of New York City. This did what it was built to do, with disastrous consequences. You may have already guessed what kind of technological network this is part of. It's a bit of a power station. The power station known as Adam Beck 2, here at Niagara, where electricity is generated by the tremendous power of falling water. And on the particular evening in question, this relay detected an increase in power on one of those lines that was above a preset limit. When that happened, magnets set around this metal cup caused it to rotate, and that brought this arm to make a contact like this. That contact was made on the evening of November the 9th, 1965, at 16 minutes and 11 seconds past 5. The effect was to cascade power off the overloaded line and onto another, which overloaded and tripped the next, until all 5 lines going north had tripped out, dumping their entire load onto lines going south. Within 7 seconds, the tremendous overload began to take out generating stations all over northeastern America, from Boston to New York, as the network fell apart. As each area went, it overloaded the next. Within 10 seconds, the only major system left was the great energy island of New York.
Well, we better shut it down, I guess.
So I'm just going to pause it for a second. It's very interesting. They go through this really nice process, and what would happen? This is the fascinating part, is what if the power never came back on? What would you do? You can't just stay in the city. You can't just stay there. There's no food, there's no water, there's no anything. Getting out of the city is going to be a whole feat entirely. And let me play from this point on just a little bit.
The minute you decide to move, you're on your own, in a way that no modern 20th century city dweller has ever been in his life. And then the traps begin to close. To start with, do you even know where to go in order to survive? Did you manage to get a map before you left? And if you did, how do you get out? Walk? Drive until you run out of fuel? Are you ahead of the millions of other people pouring down these roads trying to do just what you're trying to do? And if they catch up with you, have you got something they need? And if you have, can you protect yourself? Did you bring enough food and drink to last as long as necessary? And if you didn't, where will you get it? Steal? How far out will you have to push on until you're far enough out to be safe? And can you be sure that's far enough?
It really triggers a person to think about the entire process. You run out of fuel, run out of food, you run out of water, you don't have a map, you don't have your phone, you don't have a GPS, you don't even know how to get to the next state or the next place that you need to go. I wish I could play this whole section, but it's going to be too long. So we're going to jump through. And basically, he gets to a farm and he says, if we got to a farm, now what do we do? What's the process?
The only way you're going to survive is if you find the one thing you need to keep on providing the food you've got to have. And you don't need the mechanized version of that thing. You need the kind people haven't used in 100 years. You need that kind of plow. You're saved. Or are you? Because what it comes down to at this point is this. Can you use a plow? It's taken a series of miracles just to get you this far, and here you are with the biggest miracle of all, a plow and animals to pull it. So maybe after a few days of fumbling around with the harnesses and the bits and pieces, you manage to yoke up the oxen and plow the land. And then and only then can you say that you have successfully escaped the wreckage of technological civilization and lived off the land and survived, if you know how to use the furrow you plow. I mean, can you tell the difference between an ear of corn and a geranium seed? Do you know when to sow whatever it is you think it is? Do you know when to harvest it and eat the bit that you think isn't poisonous? I mean, it's no accident that the chain of events triggered off by that relay in the power station back there in Niagara Falls ends here with the plow. The relay itself doesn't matter.
So, very fascinating and really causes a person to think, if this happened, and the Bible says it will happen, what are the things that we absolutely need to survive? And what do we need to consider in order to do that? Do we have the skills to even do that? Like you said, there's the oxen that are standing there in the plow. Well, the likelihood of finding a plow like that at some random farm might be low, especially a working one. And finding the oxen is going to be probably even more low. And then your ability to drive them, lower than that. So what do we need to be thinking about? And we have started already a series of studies that are going to be several dozen weeks long, going through the end time events and also asking some of these questions. How do we prepare for this? It's every Saturday at 5:30 p.m. PST time. We've already done 2 weeks of these studies. We've talked about the beast in Revelation 13. We talked about some of the different topics we're going to cover. And this upcoming Saturday, we're going to talk about what is the mark of the beast. And I'm going to read you a verse here in just a moment, why the mark of the beast and what we're talking about right now is actually connected. So here are some things that I believe are the 3 pillars of a country property. And if we're talking about getting out of the city, you want to do that before a crisis, not after a crisis. After a crisis, your likelihood is near nothing. I mean, like he said, it's a series of miracles that would have to happen. And if we're warned ahead and Noah had opportunity to build an ark and he didn't, the story would have ended a little bit differently. But he obeyed God before the storm happened, not during the storm. So here's some things to think about that I think about. Land. How much do I need? Where is it located? What is the typography? Water. These are the 3 things that you need. You need land, you need water, and you need wood. If you don't have land, you can't grow, you can't build a house, you can't do anything. Now, you need water. You'd die in a couple days without water. You need to water your garden, you need to water yourselves or your livestock, whatever you have needs water. Then wood. Why do you need wood? You need wood if you need to do repairs, if you need to do fences, but most importantly, you need wood so that you can cook, that you can clean your water, that you can stay warm. In Canada, it gets cold, and in the States, it gets cold. we need to be thinking about a lot of these things if you don't have it. And the other question is, how much? How much do I need? How much water and how much wood? Most people haven't even asked these questions. They think, well, here's a nice little cute little property, and here's a spot for a garden. Then, there's 3 trees over here. That's probably good. But they've never tested it. They don't know. Oh, I need to harvest my wood. How many? Because firewood's actually done by cords. And if you've never heard of the wood cord before, you might want to start learning about some of those things, which we're going to be talking about. Now, we also have a YouTube channel called How to Country, where we show you guys how we do this and what we do. Everyone's different. You can do whatever you like. But what we do is what we're showing on the How to Country YouTube channel. So we have these things, but how much? How much land does it take in order to grow food? I want to see in the chat, and we're only going to be able to go here for another few minutes. These are important ideas. Land. I want you to see what you guys think. How much land do I need? Let's say, let's make this for a family of 4, okay? 2 adults, 2 children. Let's just say they're all eating like adults, though. So it's 4 people, family of 4. How much land do you need? Water? How much water do you need? How much wood do you need? I want to see what you guys are going to say in the chat. Put your comments in the chat there. Okay. Now, there's 2 more verses I want to read just to close. And this is Daniel 12, verse 1. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was, since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. A time of trouble such as never was. So we should not be looking for the easiest time we've ever seen. We need to be looking for the worst time that we could ever imagine. It's going to be worse than anything that ever was. But we're being warned ahead. God is merciful enough to warn us ahead. Now, this is a very important part of this, and I forgot I didn't add, this is from Revelation, chapter 13. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And what's going to happen to the people with this evil mark? Well, and that no man might buy or sell unless he has the mark. So if you don't have this mark, which is a bad mark, you can't buy or sell. So even if the world is going round, you won't be able to utilize it because you can't buy or sell, because the whole world is got on this train and they're marking everyone with the mark of the beast. And if you don't have the mark of the beast, you can't even partake in commerce anymore. You can't pay for electricity. You can't pay for your phone. You can't pay for internet. You don't have anything. So I want to get back to just see what some of you guys mentioned here. Okay. Some said 2 acres, 30 acres, groundwater stream. Wood is like money in the bank. 4 people need 800 square meters for growing food per year, at least 4 liters per day per person. So quite a bit. That's without washing your hands or anything else. So we have tons of different answers in here. The thing is, Noah was warned ahead and he prepared. He prepared an ark for the saving of his family, and not only them, but all the animals that joined him. If we want to be ready for these final events, we need to be ready for exactly what God says is going to happen. And if he says you can't buy or sell, that means you have to be able to self-sustainably live without being able to buy or sell. That's how I read it. Maybe some of you read it differently, but how I read it is when the Bible says no buy, no sell. For me, that means no buy, no sell. And I'm not taking the mark of the beast. So I need to be ready in order to be living self-sustainably. And we're going to cover how much land, food, water, all of these things it takes to be self-sufficient over the coming weeks, because a lot of people maybe have no idea. I didn't have an idea before I really started looking into this and studying this and trying it practically. Because most people have not grown enough food for them to live for an entire year and stored enough food to live for an entire year. So we're going to be covering some of these things, so you don't want to miss our studies that are happening Saturday. Some of them might end up on a Friday, because there's going to be a lot of them. We're going to be talking about this for a long time. The final events, it's very important. Noah went around. He gathered food for all the animals. He gathered seeds from around the world. That's why we have seeds today. He did a due diligence. 120 years he prepared for this one event. And we need to be preparing for this one event that is worse than any event that has ever happened in all of history. And it sounds scary. It sounds impossible. But nothing's impossible with God. And he tells us so that we are ready. And we're sharing our experience, and we're sharing our understanding with all of you so that you can be ready too, because we don't want any of you to be caught as a thief in the night. That's why we are talking about these things. Take these little events that are happening in Spain, that happened during the last few years, as a warning, as a wake-up call. These people in the world are putting some of these pieces together for us, and we need to be the ones that are pushing this preparation message, because we are the ones who have the Bible. We know the playbook, and maybe we don't know it good enough. That's why we need to be studying. But there's no reason to fear. God is not a God of fear. He's a God of peace. Be still and know that I am God. He will help every single person who wants to be ready. He helped Noah to build that ark. It was a lot. Noah had to do a lot of work, but God gave him direction, and God showed him and helped him exactly what he needed to do in order to be ready. So may God give you the strength. May you keep studying, and join us on this upcoming Saturday. We're going to talk about the mark of the beast. What is it, and how will it affect us? And in the coming weeks, we're going to see how can we avoid taking the mark of the beast and be ready for all this time of trouble, such as never was. God bless, and we'll see you in the next video.